All right, so we are now going to be doing the PBR version of this cube, and the main difference with this is that the resulting texture maps are going to be pretty different. So there's going to be many more of them, as opposed to only having a diffuse map like in the previous previous hand painted version. So in this case, we're going to have a diffuse or a color map. We're going to also have a normal map, and we're going to have two maps that basically tell the game engines how the lights should react on the surface. So one of those is going to be a metallic map, the other one is going to be a roughness map, and then emissive map if you want some glowy bits on your character or something. So yeah, let's get started. So what we're going to have is we're going to start in Zbrush here, kind of like right before, to get our high poly, and it's already done in this case, so we'll save some time there. And then we are going to move into TopoGun if needed to do retopology. And from there, after the topology is done, we are going to go into Maya to do the UVs. From there, once the UVs are done, we're going to bring everything into Substance Painter and then do the bakes there and then start working on the textures there. So that's going to be the set of tools that we use here. So let's go ahead and export that. So if you remember last one, I exported it decimated, but since there's a lot of like planar surfaces, Jesus. There's a lot of artifacts. So instead, I'm just going to export it this way, so we don't have those artifacts when I do the bake, so I don't have anything to clean up. So it very high for just a cube, but whatever. That'll save me some time later. That's worth it. That's a cube high. We're going to export that. So I have it here. So it's imported here in TopoGun. So I loaded the reference, and this is it. So now we remember we did a cube in Maya here, so we can actually reuse that instead of doing the topology in TopoGun. So it's we'll save a couple minutes here. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of these, and maybe to get a head start, we can select the edges of this, and we go ahead and bevel those. So that's obviously too much right now. Change the offset. No, offset refraction. It's a little bit more subtle. Something like this. That's good. And yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and export that, and then we'll bring it into. So normally I would have done this step, in TopoGun if I had to do retopology. In this case, I can bring it in. So I'm gonna load my scene. First, I'm gonna save that. Export it as cube low PBR. There we go. And I'm going to be importing that into here. Cube low PBR. There we go. So as you can see here, it matches the high poly a lot more. So it wraps around the soft edges really nicely. And in this case, I'll do it just for the sake of doing it, but there probably wouldn't be a need for me to add any kind of any more subdivisions into this mesh. This would bake just fine. It's not like the details here are like protruding enough that it warrants a retopo. So that cube here would do just great. But for the sake of it, I'm just going to go ahead and yeah, add a little bit of details. Just why not? So I'm just gonna model those things out basically, the little ridges there. So this way, the normal map's not gonna have to do as much work because the model itself is gonna have enough information. Very quickly, I'm just gonna go around like this. So I'll just do it for the top. Just save some time. No point in doing everything. This. All right. And for these ones right here, you can stick them to the surface a little closer. So I'm just moving them, and that's going to stick them to the surface. You can see here, this one's kind of floating. The second I touch it and move it around, it snaps to the surface. This one. Right, that should be it. Okay, so there we go. So I could straighter. But whatever. And I'm gonna add some more details to here. So yeah, again, this is way overkill. I would never need to do that normally. I'm just doing this for the sake of this test here. Okay, so it's gonna be enough. Can merge these two here. This, save some polygons. Okay. So yeah, I'm not gonna go ahead and do the other side because who cares? I think you get the idea at this point. But yeah, so there you go. So that would be kind of like the process, try to match your high poly as much as possible while keeping within your polygon budget. And so yeah, this is a very, very high res cube. But let's stop here. And what I'm gonna do now is just go file and save scene as. And I'll save it over what we had before. So I'll save it over the cube low PBR. And then, as I said, we go back into Maya. And I'm going to be doing the UVs for that thing. So that, and import the new cube low PBR. There we go. All right, so this is what we have. So yeah, let's see. So I'm gonna smooth the edges, soften the edges for this. Because if you don't do that, the hard edge is gonna bake in, and we don't want that. We want the normal map to do the work. So there we go. Everything is softened now, and so it can be anything. Like I don't know, depending on the program that you use, but we don't want hard edges. Basically, we don't want this. We don't want to see all the little faces. We want to make sure that those are all softened, just like that. So this is pretty good. It's a pretty good result. When the result is bad, you'll get like really dark highlights somewhere. So let's say I create a cube like this. So like for this cube here, if I soften this, like you'll get a lot of like black shadows, because the program is trying to make this cube soft, like to make it look as round as possible, as rounded as possible. So it's trying to make it look like a sphere, but obviously it's not. So you get this weird dark shadows here. So when you see this, it just means that the normal map is going to have to do that job, and it'll generally give a really bad bake, bad normal map bake. So you don't want that. Instead, if you have a so when you have something like this, when you rotate around it, there's no black shadows, other than like if you had a really crazy angle, you can see here, like on the edges, you see a little bit. But yeah, that's a good result. So we're happy with that, and now we're going to go ahead and do UVs for this. So bring up the UV editor in whatever program you're using, and for this, you can do all kind of unfolding, but since it's a cube, we're going to go ahead and do a cylindrical UV. Let's see what that looks like. So I'm gonna select this and unfold. So since this is a box, like I want to cut it open, just like it were a real box. So I'm gonna select these spaces here. This. And I'll be cutting along those lines. Like these. Like these. Okay, and I'll have to cut all the way here. Okay, unselect these edges. Right, let's cut that. Let's see. Now we're going to do an unfold again. All right, so here's one piece. Here's another one. So obviously I cut them a little bit too much. So we're going to be merging some of these. Let's see. This one here. This one here. All these edges here, I'm going to resew them to the other side. Switch together. There we go. And this one I'm going to attach. Just like this. All right, so now we have our box that's unfolded. So I'm going to merge a couple of things here. So this can be merged together. And yeah, everything else looks pretty good. There we go. I can go ahead and do an unfold again. Straighten UVs. So you got some nice straight UVs in here. I'm going to put that in the proper little square here, that it fits in there. No, it doesn't. All right, so you just want to make sure that it fits into this, this one square here, that it uses as much of the space as possible. In this case, it's a box, so it's a little bit of a crappy use of space, but whatever. Just put it in the middle like this. All right, so the UVs are done. So now I'm going to take this, export it over itself. So cube below PBR, we're going to keep the same one. Now this is the one that's done. So all right, next up, we are going to be importing the mesh into Substance Painter, because that's where we're going to be doing the bakes, as opposed to the hand-painted version where we did it in TopoGun. We can do it in Painter in here, and it actually hooks up everything, so we don't have to do much, which is great. So the first thing we want to do in here is go ahead and create a new project. So this is what we see when you create a new project. Obviously, you know, like all these little things, I'll go over them as I do this. But you know, if you want some more, you know, introduction videos, that kind of stuff for Substance Painter, you can go ahead and check out the Allegorithmic their YouTube channel. They have a lot of beginner stuff to kind of just you know, introduce you to the entire UI and all the different features of the program. So this is not quite an introduction. I'm just going to go over kind of like the tools that I'll be using. So and explaining those along the way. So first things first, as I said here, we're going to go ahead and select the template. So there are different ones for the kind of you know, the kind of asset that you're going to be making. So that's, you know, whatever you select here is highly dependent on the end product that you're looking for. So if you're going to do something, for example, in Unity, and you want to create this asset and then, you know, eventually have it plugged into your Unity project, you'll want to go ahead and select this one here, or non-PBR spec gloss. Whenever you see spec gloss, this is kind of like the words that Unity uses for roughness and metalness, whatever, roughness and metalness. Instead, they use specular and gloss map. So it's the same thing, essentially. It's just a different name. And so yeah, there's different options here. So alpha, if you have like a transparency, Dota, if you're going to make a Dota 2 asset, obviously. But in our case, we're going to be creating this asset as if it was going to be imported into Unreal Engine 4. And so we're going to go ahead and select this one here, PBR metal roughness, and then select the low poly mesh that we will be working on. And cube low PBR, this is the one. So this here, we don't want to check that. Make sure it's DirectX, and then compute tangent space per fragment. So this is kind of how the engine is going to calculate the normal. So that will influence how Substance Painter bakes the normal. So if you want to go with a Unreal Engine 4 kind of an end product, you want to make sure that this is checked. If you're going to be working in Unity afterwards, you don't want this checked. So then after this, the document resolution doesn't really impact much right now, but we're going to be working in 1024, so might as well just leave it like that, and everything else is going to be in 1024 anyway. So let's go ahead and hit OK. So now it's loaded up our box. And well, as you can see, there's not much details on it because nothing has been baked yet. So we are going to go ahead and bake. So the first thing that we want to do here is find this window here. So texture set settings. And you know, if you need it, scroll down to the bake textures, because right now those are all the textures that are available. Those are all the things that you can plug in to this, you know, particular shader. And right now there's nothing, so you can click on them and import them manually. Or in this case, you know, you would import them into your shelf here and then click and drag them into the appropriate slot. But we don't have any of those, so we're going to bake them. So go ahead and click bake textures. And then here we are, the baking settings. So we're going to start with the first one, obviously. So common. So this is going to be kind of the main window that we want to pay attention first. The output size is going to be the size of the texture maps that are coming out of this bake. So as I said, we are going to be working in 1024 by 1024. So the second thing here, dilation width. This is how much how many pixels your texture map is going to kind of like expand beyond the bake, beyond the UV island. So basically, depending on like what your resolution is going to be, that number will change. Since we're 1024 by 1024, like 4 or 5 pixels should be good. So that's what we'll do here. 5 pixels. Let's go with that. So I always recommend having this on. And then here, right below, this is where we load up our high definition map, high definition mesh. So that would be our cube high. That's what's going to be baked onto this low poly. And we don't want to use a cage because I've never used that in my entire career actually, because it's not needed. Maybe in some like very particular scenario you might want to do that. I'm not sure. Anyways, so skip that. And these two here are going to be kind of like the default. It's going to take the mesh, the low poly mesh as your cage essentially, and then this is how far it'll search for high poly kind of information outwards and inwards the shape. So this is a number that's a little bit abstract. It depends on the number that kind of like the size of your object, depending on what was the size of it in Maya, for example. So for now, I'm just gonna leave it at this. This should be fine. So because the high poly was very, very close to the low poly cage. So a small search distance should do just fine. So we're gonna leave that like this. And these other options down here, we don't need to pay attention to them right now, but those are just different baking settings. We're not gonna touch those in this tutorial, so don't worry about them. Next up, normal map. So obviously we want to leave that checked because we're going to need that map. There's nothing to edit here. We want the world space normal too. It's not really needed for the most part, but some of the substances in here, they use that, so we want to at least have it. Why not? It's just derived from the low poly and the normal map, I think. So it shouldn't take any time to render. The ID, that's good if you have like a bunch of different materials on your asset, and you want to have each of those materials have their own kind of like a color. So this is a map that we might use for the full character. We'll see, but for now we absolutely don't need it because we only have one material anyway. Ambient occlusion, this is the other one that's really important. So in this case, there's not much to change in here actually. Nothing at all except the first one here. So by default, most of these are fine. The secondary rays here, this is the kind of like the resolution of your ambient occlusion. So what a number that I like is around 256. That's a good number to have. If you go too low, your bake is going to be a little bit grainy, like it will look dirty a little bit. The higher you go, the smoother your finish is going to look basically. So yeah, you want to keep that somewhat high. If you go too low, it saves you time, but quality is shit. Curvature, this is good also because a lot, if not all, of the substances here use that stuff, and this is very similar to what we did, the action that we did in Photoshop before, kind of like the fake crazy bump thing. So that will do exactly the same. So it'll kind of like highlight the edges and then darkens kind of like the cracks and that kind of stuff. So this is how much you want it to be. So by default it's going to be fairly subtle, and then if you want it to be very, very noticeable, you can crank it up. So we might have to rebake this depending on which substance that we choose or which material that we choose later on. For now, we'll go like really, really, not really high, but let's whatever, 34. Let's try that. And then in here, so we want per pixel because that's going to take the ambient occlusion, the normal map, and will generate the curvature map based on the normal map. If you go with pixels, it will do it based on the verts on your mesh. So let's, in this case, we don't have that many verts, so it would look pretty bad. But if you have like a mesh that's really, really high res and you don't want to use, you don't have a normal map, for example, then maybe, you might want to select this to check and see if it's worth it. But most of the time, it'll be per vertex, so just leave that like this. Position. This is also an interesting one. Some of these materials here have kind of like a gradient from low to high. So let's say you'll have a lot of dirt at the bottom and not so much dirt at the top. So some of these use that stuff here, and it's always on the y-axis that it uses. So leave it on the y-axis. And here, I don't know why there's a thing that's called B-box. I don't even know what that does, but you want it to be set to B-sphere basically. So yeah, just leave it like that. Thickness, we can disable that. It's for stuff like subsurface scattering and that kind of thing, and we obviously don't need that for this cube. So yeah, we're pretty much all done now. So we can go ahead and bake, and it'll bake in 1024 by 1024, and it should hook up all these things, all the available maps to our texture sets. Let's go ahead and generate that. So as you can see here, it already generated a normal map, because we can see it's been hooked up, and now it's done. So that didn't take long, and you can see here all the maps that were baked. They already plugged. This is the curvature one. So as you can see, we set it to 34. It's a little bit intense, so we probably want to generate that again. But we'll see what happens, what it looks like. And next, let's check out the display settings, the viewer settings. So make sure that the AO intensity is set to 1, because the one that we have already is very, very subtle. So I'll remove it, and you'll see. So if you look in the cracks here, like the little corner, right here, gone there, gone there. So it's super subtle because my details are subtle. Yeah, so I want to make sure that this is at least somewhat visible. And yeah, we're done. So our bakes are done. Now what we can do is just add a material to this. So the layers here, this is our layer stack. It's very similar to Photoshop and how they work and how you organize them. And what we want to try here, just real quick, to get some textures on here, we'll add a smart material. Smart materials are cool. The other ones here, layer, fill layer. I mean, with these, you can create a smart material if you know what you're doing. But for now, we're just going to go ahead and create a smart material and kind of like edit that instead. So click on that, and then you have the list here. Or you can also just select it from here. All right, so there we go. So that's a little bit, doesn't look too good, but don't worry, we can tweak that. So this is just the default, those are just like preset materials. And so, if you, actually, let's go steel paint. So, whatever's on top is the one that kind of like takes over. So in this case, if I hide this, we'll see whatever's below. But if I hide this, there's not going to be any change. So we're going to just delete that one and just have this one here. And so what this is doing right now is taking the curvature map and essentially, whatever in here, whatever is white, it's not showing, basically. So it's not showing the red paint on all the areas that are white. So we're going to rebake this again because it's a little bit too intense, and you'll see kind of like the change at the same time. So we just go back here to our bake textures, and we're going to go to curvature. We're going to select everything else because we don't want to bake the other ones. They're fine. I'm going to go to curvature and reduce details to, let's see, 3. And try to bake again and see what that does. So yeah, now it's a little bit better. So as you can see here, now it's not as crazy. And a couple more things we're going to do in here before we end this. just to make that a little bit more pretty, is a change of color because it's a little bit too intense right now. So we'll just go with like a regular box. Like that. All right, and then the edge is a little bit crazy. This is the those are all the different layers that make up this one material. So you can edit, each of these so that you get exactly the look that you want. Of the metal, this one, it's a little bit darker, and a little bit closer to kind of like the brownish color that we have on the outside. Yeah, something like that. And here we can change, of course. Each of these layers have different properties, and you can check and uncheck those to see what happens if you remove them. So whenever those are selected, you can actually like tweak them. So you can make those that metal underneath to be a little bit less metallic, so it doesn't stand out as much. Maybe something like this, and then lower that color so that the edges don't stand out as much. And we can also paint a little bit over this. So kind of what we did, and also before, if you want to see like each of the individual layers, or like the result of each of the layers with everything combined, you can press C, and then you see again, and it kind of like cycles through all of them. C. That's it. Then you go M again to show your the whole thing. So yeah, the last thing we're going to do here is just paint the insides here a little bit of a different color. So we're going to select, we're going to bring the layer that we had before below. We're going to bring it on top of this, otherwise we're not going to see it. Now, if I paint stuff, we actually see it. But now it's just painting white. White base color with these particular settings. So what I want to do here is change those settings a little bit and maybe disable some of those. So if you don't touch this, if it's just the color, it'll use whatever height, normal, and like it'll use whatever else is underneath and kind of just paint the color on top. So it's not going to change the property of the surface. The light's going to react still the same way. But if we want to change that a little bit, so if you want to select height, roughness, middle, normal map, we're not going to touch it. But yeah, you can play with that here, either one at a time or all at the same time. So if you're going to have all of these, you might as well have them all at the same time here. So metallic roughness, let's see what that looks like. So you can see it changes a little bit. So I think we don't need the height. So the cool thing with this is that you can actually see what you're about to paint. This is the kind of like the preview of what you're painting. So I'm going to change the color. I want to paint white. I'm going to paint, let's see, this color. I'm going to undo all these things. And paint like this. Maybe a little bit darker. And brighter. Yeah, and then just like a 3D code, you can go ahead and paint directly on your mesh. And then the cool thing with this is that it's not only painting color; you're painting the property of whatever material you created. Something like this. So of course, this doesn't look that great, but this is enough for the purpose of the test that we wanted to do. So there we go. So that's how you kind of create a PBR asset. So from this point on, you could just export all the different maps and then plug those into the game engine, and we'd be pretty much done. So this is what we're going to be doing later. This was just kind of an overview, but yeah, this wraps up this demo for how to create a PBR asset.